day 3. You've all seen a lot. This will go easy. There's 0 code in this presentation, so hopefully it'll go nice and easy. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the culture of Flutter. Culture in general is something that's important to me. Hopefully it's important to you, but first, hello, good morning. My name is David DeRemer. I'm the founder and CEO of Very Good Ventures. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I wanted to just mention sort of an interesting anecdote. This room is called the Hamilton Room, and if you haven't seen it outside, there's a sign that explains it. It's for Margaret Hamilton. She had a big impact on our industry and what we're doing here. In fact, I was interested to learn from the sign that she coined the term software engineer, and when I saw that, the coincidence was really incredible, because there's some content here later we'll get to that kind of talks to that. But of course, there's another coincidence when I saw that this room was named Hamilton, relative to my own personal journey. About 6 years ago, rather than being in this room, I was furiously working on like alpha or beta stage Firebase functions, and our team was working with Eric and others on the Flutter team trying to figure out how to get copy-paste to work in Flutter, things along those lines. And Hamilton, this app really started my journey, and maybe for some of you, kind of put Flutter on the map for you. So, you know, it's amazing that 6 years later, after that, here we are, our very first FlutterCon. Pretty amazing to go through the last few days of content and to see this community grow to what it is today. So I wanted to take a moment, if we can, to just do a round of applause for the organizers of the FlutterCon. Thank you very much. It's a lot of work. Thank you. It's a lot of work to put something like this on, and to see our community grow to this and have this moment, it's really special. So thank you very much. So to start off today, I want to try to keep this a little bit fun. Probably nobody knows this movie anymore, but we'll see. All right, a few, all right, at least one, good. I wanted to start by telling a very light story of the movie Office Space. Has anybody seen it? Okay, a few people, good, good. First off, this is gonna show some of us in the room exactly how old we are by knowing this movie. This movie's from 1999. It was by Mike Judge, Beavis and Butthead, and a variety of other shows. What I found interesting about this when I was thinking about how to start this presentation is that I think this really tells a story of a company that none of us want to work for. There's basically 3 types of character in this movie. The first one is software developers. I think we can all identify with software developers. They're the ones doing the actual work at this company. They're extremely frustrated by the company's policies, by all their bureaucracy and process, TPS reports, things along those lines. They're generally extremely disgruntled, and basically their only motivation is to not get hassled. So, you know, not a good situation for developers to be in. The other type of roles are just like, I don't know. There's these other people at the company. It's kind of unclear what they do. They're just kind of there. The only thing that seems to be clear is that they just kind of get in the way of the developers. And then lastly, there's the management, Bill Lumbergh. He only really cares about the bottom line. He seems to only really care about developers doing some menial, stupid tasks that don't seem to really matter or have any real impact on anything. Essentially, they're totally ignorant of what developers really need to be successful. The culture here at this company is absolutely terrible. Terrible. The team's frustrated, there's no trust, they're not motivated, and generally the outcomes are pretty bad. And if you watch the movie, you know that things get pretty ugly. I'm not going to spoil it. This is about as far as I'm going to go with the plot of the movie. You should add it to your next Netflix queue if you haven't seen it. It's a great movie. But the point is that the culture at this company is so bad, it literally brings the company down in flames. So now, this was 1999. I don't know where all of you were in 1999. I saw this movie in the theater, so that gives you some idea of how old I am. Amazon was new. This is an actual shot of Jeff Bezos in the Amazon office from 1999 from a 60 Minutes report. Oops, sorry, let me go back. Sorry. Elon Musk had not yet killed Twitter. There was no iOS or Android. In fact, the iPod hadn't even come out in 1999. But yet we had this movie about software engineering culture. 24 years later, I have to ask, is this pure nostalgia, this movie? You know, can we still identify in some way with the story? Have you worked at a place that kind of felt like that, or know of somebody who works at a culture like this? Hopefully not, you know. I think we've come a long way. This is a quote from Caitlin Stein, who's an engineering leader at Stripe and formerly at Betterment. She told me, you can't create great outcomes with bad culture. So I think more than ever, we understand that culture really has an impact on business. We're going to talk about that a lot today. But I think a lot of companies still have a lot of room for improvement, especially very large companies. I think in a tech there is something that maybe we can still identify in some way. So before we go any further, like, what exactly is culture? We hear this, we talk about it. We all know it. We all know what culture is. You probably are experiencing culture here. You're going to museums, seeing history and all types of things. It's language, it's arts, it's all these things. But what does it mean at a company? What does it mean for a development team? So let's just go to the definition. What is culture? So I'll read it here. It's the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or an organization. This is the definition from the dictionary that's like kind of about companies or organizations as opposed to broader culture. But it gives you an idea. It's values, goals, practices, right? It's these things that matter. I actually really liked this quote that Sam Moore from Betterment gave me, which is, it's the shape of how people in the business collaborate. I really like this one. I think this for me really sums it up. It's about how we collaborate with each other as a team, with the broader organization, with our community. So, just to recap, I don't know, maybe Ted Lasso is one we all are more familiar with these days. It's the values, beliefs, and behaviors of a team that helps the team achieve its goals. That is culture, I think. Oops, I hit the wrong button. There we go. Sorry about that. All right, so Chris Simon, he's the VP of engineering for the consumer engineering team at Keller Williams. Keller Williams is the largest real estate franchise in the United States. He told me that the most important thing a leader can do is create a positive winning culture in an organization. Now, he didn't just say it's an important thing. He said it's the most important thing. The most important thing a leader can do is create a positive winning culture in an organization. I'm not talking about how many lines of code we can write, how fast can we ship features, how much revenue can we generate. He's talking about culture, a positive winning culture. So there's a lot of research on this. You can Google this. It was hard to pick just a couple of stats. I wanted to pick a few that were relevant. There's a lot of research on the importance of culture on organizations and teams. I thought this one was really interesting. Nearly 2/3, according to MIT Sloan Management Review, nearly 2/3 of employees list corporate culture among the most important reasons to stay with a current employer or to pursue a new job. 2/3, it's pretty big. Forbes did some research and they came up, I don't exactly know how they came up with this, so just bear with me. Companies with strong cultures have a 4x increase in revenue growth compared to those that don't. So we're not just talking about touchy-feely, like are you happy to go to work? Is there a ping pong table in the break room? We're talking about money. We're talking about revenue. We're talking about real business results. The investment in culture, in your team and how your team performs, leads to real business results. Christopher Gulliver, he was director of engineering at Slick Deals. We worked with him there, and he's gone on to start his own company. He said, culture can be one of the biggest multipliers on a team's performance across the board. So, what does this have to do with Flutter? We're at FlutterCon. Flutter's a technology. We all love it. I'm up here rambling on about team culture. So what does that have to do with this? Well, I personally think, through my observations, through working with Flutter for the last 6 years, that there's a benefit of Flutter that we need to talk about more. We talk about Flutter often as a multi-platform, or it's a way to build multi-platform apps from a single code base. Fantastic benefit. We are all here in this room today because of this benefit, because of what Eric and others at Flutter have created. It is amazing. It's an amazing tool. I think we all can agree. But it's just kind of the functional benefit. It just describes kind of what it does. It kind of gets to the buy one, get one free nature of cross-platform, right? It's like efficiency. It's good. It's a good value. There's another definition, though, and I don't know if you've seen this. It's just below the main hero image on the flutter.dev website. The very first line says, Flutter transforms the app development process. Now, that says something, I think. A lot more than the other one in terms of value. We're talking about transforming the app development process. That's much bigger in scope, right? That is much bigger in impact in terms of what we're talking about. We're not just talking about single code base, hot reload, all these things. We're talking about changing how an app is developed overall, the overall process. So much bigger value, right? But I think there's something else great about Flutter, very related to that, but I think another layer. You probably guess where I'm going with it. And I think, based on my own observations, seeing VGV and how our teams come together, our client teams, the impact that our work and Flutter has had on them, stories from the community. I've noticed that for some reason, teams working with Flutter tend to build great cultures. Maybe you've noticed that. Have you noticed it? Do you feel it? Do you feel it in this community? Do you feel that teams working with Flutter somehow are working a little bit better than others? Is there something about Flutter that improves team culture? What is it, I've just noticed that generally speaking, when I find a Flutter developer, they seem to be really happy, right? There's something about the developer experience that seems better, seems less frustrating. In fact, that's kind of how we got into it. We didn't get into Flutter because we had some, wave forward thinking of like, oh my God, this is gonna be huge and we gotta get into Flutter. It was literally because I'd go to the team and be like, well, we could build this native. And they were like, nope, Flutter's just easier. I wanna do it that way. But I also think Flutter has a tendency to bring teams together in a way that a lot of other technologies haven't. I think it increases confidence and trust on teams. And I think it ultimately establishes good team culture. So I think there's another benefit of Flutter that we wanna talk about a little bit more as a community. I think Flutter helps transform team culture. So this is a hugely important value of adopting Flutter. It's the most important thing, right, a leader can do, is create good, positive, winning culture in their company. So if Flutter has any role in that, it's the most important thing we can do. So how does Flutter create great team cultures? It doesn't. You're like, wait a second, what? What do you mean it doesn't create good culture? What are we here for? What is this conversation all about? The point is that we create great team cultures. You all, the people. Technology doesn't create culture. It's a technology. It's just a tool. It's software running in a thing. Technology can't create culture. We as the people using the technology creates the culture. We create culture by being who we are, by collaborating as a team, by collaborating within our organization, by setting the tone of this community. But Flutter does have a role, because I think Flutter's a cheat code. I think that Flutter helps to make it easier to achieve those better cultures. I think it's a spark, it's a catalyst. It's something that helps us achieve that dream of not being in a tech, of being a company that really helps to connect people, really helps to connect our teams with our broader organizations. So for the rest of this, I'm gonna go through 5 ways that I think Flutter is a catalyst for team culture. These are just 5 observations. There's probably more. Some of these are not necessarily specific to Flutter, but that doesn't really matter. I don't think it's about Flutter being highly unique. I think it's about observing the opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities. And specifically for this one, catalyst number 1. Flutter creates the opportunity for cultural change. Okay, it's pretty basic, right? It just creates the opportunity. There's nothing necessarily unique or specific to Flutter in this case. Any new software development project has this opportunity potentially. But Flutter projects, are generally replatforms. A lot of our projects have this. Somebody comes, they've got an old app, it's been around 5-6 years. iOS and Android are really muddy. They're replatforming to Flutter. They're starting over. They're rebooting something. Maybe the product is kind of achieved its end of life. They need to rethink it. It needs a different thing. Or it's just something totally new, a brand new product, right? Each one of these is a reset moment. It's an opportunity to interrogate the culture, to look at what your team is doing, how you're performing, what are your values, what are your benefits, what are your beliefs, what are your processes, your behaviors as a team. And in the course of trying something new, implement something different for how you behave as a group. Caitlin again said, a reset gives the team space to collaborate across the old iOS Android lines to define patterns and best practices. So here what I'm saying is it's not about Flutter necessarily. It's about seizing the opportunity to take the time and put in the energy to reboot your culture, to figure out how do you want to work together as a team. So I want to tell a little story about Keller Williams, the consumer engineering side of Keller Williams. As I mentioned before, they're the largest real estate franchise in the United States. They had a consumer app, iOS and Android app. A legacy app, code was becoming a challenge, right? It was getting disorganized, it was getting hard to maintain. It was getting bottlenecked. There was not a lot of tests, not a lot of automation. So Chris Sinan, who's the VP of engineering on the consumer side over there, he was like, we gotta do something about this. Not only do we have a technical problem with our code base in that the app has a lot of challenges, but we have a culture problem too. So he said, "We decided the opportunity to break old habits, among Flutter's other benefits, was a compelling reason to switch." That's pretty amazing when you think about it. So mostly we talk about buy one, get one, right? He's saying that for his team, changing the team culture and getting them on a better path was in and of itself a reason to make a switch. Flutter provided the opportunity for them to redefine their team culture. After this, they understood what the codebase was about. They understood how long it would take to do things. They knew that writing tests or having automation were non-negotiable within their team cultures. They had better expectations, and it was something they all did together. They all banded together, they set these values. I think this is a crucial insight that we all too often fail to sell in opportunities to do Flutter in an organization. We tend to talk about the functional benefits. I think we don't talk about this benefit enough. Since then, the team's culture has changed dramatically. The levels of pride and confidence have grown considerably. Chris also told me that their ability to gain trust within the broader organization, of their business stakeholders, of their managers, the non-technical team has increased dramatically, where now technology is no longer seen as a thing like, man, it's probably gonna take twice as long, cost twice as much, I don't know if we should do that. There's a lot of confidence in that team to be able to execute, so they're able to do more because of the good culture that they've established. So, for them, and I think many companies, I'm just giving some examples as we go through this, there's many more of these that we could talk through for each one of these. The cultural change was at least as important as the technical improvements from switching to Flutter. So, while it's not necessarily unique to Flutter, I do want to ask you all, don't miss these opportunities. If you have an opportunity to build something new, take the time to figure out how does that team want to work together. How do you imagine operating 2, 3, 5 years down the road? How do you set those standards? How do you write them down? How do you write tools? How do you use CI/CD pipelines? How do you use all kinds of other things to help reinforce those things so that you build a culture together as a team and you stick with that over time? Don't miss the opportunity. Catalyst number 2, Flutter redefines developer identity and unites teams. Who here is a Flutter engineer? Show of hands. About what I would expect, okay? Well, I mentioned that Margaret Hamilton coined the term software engineer. At the time, it was to distinguish hardware engineers from software engineers. Now, this is very early, think about it. She coined that term because they needed a way to distinguish that. I think we've certainly expanded on that. I think we've definitely gotten a lot more fine-grained with our distinction of what an engineer is, what our expertise might be. It makes sense. There's a lot of expertise you need to be able to confidently do these things, and jobs are often posted, right, around these things. Oh, we need a React engineer. We need a iOS engineer, even finer grain positions than that. But, I think maybe we've lost sight of the value of our roles when we define ourselves these way. Would you call this guy a hammer engineer? I don't think so. It's a home builder. You don't define that person by the tool they use that they're an expert at. You define that person by the value that they build, by what they create with that tool. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a company called Agtonomy. Amazing company. They're doing some really cool stuff. I'll show in a second here. I had a chat with David Chen. He's the head of software services at Agtonomy. And the way he talked about his team really stuck with me, and I wanted to relay that to you today. So they are an ag tech company, super cool. Autonomous tractors for large fields, very interesting. They picked Flutter for the ruggedized embedded Linux thing that's on the tractor itself. And then they started using Flutter for their apps that are designed to configure the routes. They're using Flutter on the server as well. The whole thing, all of it, is Dart and Flutter, the whole stack. Pretty awesome. We need more and more examples like this out there in the world. So because they committed in that way to Flutter and Dart, he said, we're able to share code across apps, collaborate better, and make decisions faster since it's all Flutter and Dart. Their team is able to share and collaborate in a way that would otherwise not be possible if they were doing it in all these different frameworks, all these different languages, all these different things. So what does that mean for their team? Our people and skills are portable. We talk about one of Flutter's values is portable. I think we've talked about that in the past as the ability to run that code anywhere. But think about the people. Think about the skills. At VGV, we work with Toyota. We work with a company like Keller Williams. I had a junior person on the team in one of our donut chats. She said, oh, I just changed projects. I was working on Keller Williams, doing map pins for a real estate app. Now I'm working on an instrument cluster for a future Toyota. And I was like, You know how crazy that is? Right? Like a few years ago, you would have had to probably have a completely different computer science degree to do that, you know? But now we're able to make those changes thanks to Flutter. So, and most importantly for this topic, anyone can jump into any part of the ecosystem within autonomy, right, to make the product better. That's huge. It's not like, I can only do iOS. I can only do the Linux stuff for the tractor. Somebody's like, oh, you know what? I got to make this change for this. Oh, I mean, it affects the tractor. Go there. Oh, and we need some new server side. Do it all, right? The portability of that is just unbelievable. So he said, this is the line that really stuck with us. He said, we don't see ourselves as engineers specific to a single platform. We see ourselves as product engineers. That's it. They're just focused on building the product. They're focused on building the best thing for autonomy that they can, the best thing for their customer, the best thing for the company. Doesn't matter the platform, the language, none of that. They're just trying to build the best thing that they can for their company. So I think Flutter eliminates these barriers. It eliminates the barriers between team identities to realign on the value that the collective team is creating. Another anecdote I'll share is one time we went in, it was just a info share about Flutter. An executive had asked us to come in and talk about Flutter. And we were in this conference room, and the Android team came in and lined up on one side of the wall. And the iOS team came in and lined up on the other side of the wall. And we started talking about one team, Flutter, and you could just see them eyeing each other, being like, who's losing their jobs here? You know? There was so much of a barrier there that they didn't even commingle as a team. So, you know, this is kind of what that looked like, right? They had, not only were their teams separate, I think their identities, how they saw themselves as engineer. I'm an iOS engineer, you know? I'm an Android engineer. That's my identity. That's who I am. That's part of my life. That's how I represent. So they're not talking, you know? Their identities are diametrically opposed. They're enemies almost, even though they work for the same company trying to create the same exact thing. So, of course, we all know this. Flutter brings us together. Flutter breaks down those barriers of identity. We are no longer iOS or Android developers. You could say we're Flutter developers, which in and of itself is an identity, but I think it's bigger than that. I think, yes, Flutter engineer, but maybe multi-platform engineer, user experience engineer, product engineer. Maybe just go back to the original definition Margaret coined, software engineer. I don't know. But I think Flutter changes our identity, gives us an opportunity to no longer define ourselves by the technology we are an expert in, but the value we create as individuals and as a team. All right. Catalyst number 3, Flutter improves cross-functional collaboration. So Caitlin again said, large cross-functional efforts depend on the ability to collaborate across lines. A team needs to be able to move quickly. Has anyone here seen this chart before? This is communication pathways. This is what happens the more you add people to a conversation. We've all probably also played the game of telephone, where you know, like you tell somebody something, and by the time it gets to the end, it's not even the same thing you said. So imagine what's happening here when you've got 12 people, 66 lines of communication. Whew, that's a lot to manage. Now imagine that each one of those dots is actually the diagram on the right. You got 12 people on a team, maybe. Maybe you got 12 teams. That's a lot of complexity, right? That's a lot of collaboration, communication, coordination you have to do as an organization. And I actually think that this is probably one of the biggest reasons that big companies get slow. And why it's difficult to ship products sometimes, why it's difficult to implement your change, why it's difficult to have consistent values and culture on a team. It's just managing the communication. So, you know, again, I think that Flutter has an advantage here. I think Flutter pulls the team together, eliminates some of those barriers, eliminates at least some part of the complexity. It doesn't do it all. It's not a panacea. It doesn't solve everything, right? You still can mess it up big time. We've seen a lot of bad apps at VGV that have come to us. We've seen a lot of bad cultures. You can still mess it up, but Flutter is a cheat code. If you use the cheat code, it gives you 99 lives instead of 3. So I think it's important that we recognize this and move forward. Now, this is actually a story that's been told for a while. Maybe you've seen this article from Realtor.com. I went back to this one because the moment I saw this back in 2021, it really stuck with me. They published this article on their tech blog, and this was the first article about Flutter I saw that wasn't starting as its initial value proposition with the technical benefits of Flutter. It started with what Flutter did to their team. These are original drawings, so please don't judge me. In this article, they shared that before Flutter, their mobile team was organized by platform. Common, right? iOS, Android. Brick wall, right down the middle. Because of this separation, it became hard to scale. There were divergences in features, in UI, different patterns. They were solving the same problem multiple times, right? And then doing it a little bit differently. It's creating all kinds of trouble. The other thing that happened is that they became a huge bottleneck. This is basically that communication pathway chart I was just showing you. The product teams, people, oh, I got an idea, or we have customer feedback, we need to change this thing in the app. The communication gets nuts. So the teams become bottlenecks because the communication, the collaboration, the coordination across all of this becomes extremely complicated, right? So because they adopted Flutter, kind of skipping over a few steps, but still, because they adopted Flutter, they were able to actually reorganize how their team was structured. And this is back in 2021. They organized around domain teams, and now all of a sudden, when a stakeholder, product leader, business owner needed to come and talk to them about doing something, they could go directly to that team, they could implement it one time, and it could be wherever they needed it to be. So rather than organized by platform, they've dedicated themselves to specific features. Huge improvement for the culture. So by uniting app teams, right, by bringing them together, by eliminating that brick wall, and this is just the case of iOS and Android, but going back to autonomy, right, embedded part of your ecosystem. Other apps that are also Flutter and Dart, but maybe different. Maybe you share code, maybe you have the same standards, maybe you have the same tooling that you use, right? It's not just about single code base, multi-platform. I think it's about multi-code base, multi-platform, with shared culture, shared behaviors, shared values, shared beliefs, shared tools, all of these things. So as a result of improved, of this collaboration, communication is improved, that chart I showed you of all the crazy lines, that gets improved, and it helps. Does it solve it? No. It doesn't solve the whole thing, but it helps, right? And in this world where we have to move as fast as we can, ship the best product we can, any little thing we can do to help our team, to help our company, to help our own sanity and happiness, we should take advantage of. And for us, I think that's Flutter. Catalyst number 4. Flutter increases the ROI of investments in team culture. So here's another quote from Christopher. Unfortunately, culture, both good and bad, is often an accidental side effect of leadership decisions. It's just, culture for a lot of companies, I think, is just something that's there. It's something that just happens. Hopefully it's an okay culture. Hopefully the leaders are good and they have, established good patterns. But I think building good team culture doesn't just happen. I mean, sometimes maybe, but I think, if you want to guarantee it to happen, you have to focus on it. You have to invest in it. You have to put a lot of energy and attention into it, but that takes time, You need to not be thinking about the product you're creating or the user benefit. You need to be thinking about your team. We don't have unlimited time or resources. It takes effort. It takes energy. So now I want to tell you a little bit about VGV, if I may indulge myself. Because one of the things I'm most proud about at VGV is the culture we've created. And I think that we wouldn't have been able to do it. I don't think we would be where we are today. I don't think we would have the team we have. I don't think we would have the culture or the process we have if it weren't for Flutter. Flutter enabled us to invest in our team culture in a way that otherwise would not have been possible. So I'm going to explain a little bit about this. So in early 2020, we started writing things down. This is just a slide from early 2020 document I found that documented our development beliefs. And we wrote down our beliefs. And we started telling our team about it. We wrote it down. We published it. People would come into the team. We'd have onboarding sessions where one of the first things you saw when you joined the company were these slides, these beliefs. They were based both on our consulting experience, but also experience from prior companies. So for instance, Felix Angelov, Jorge Coca, they had come from BMW. They had a lot of ideas. Martin Ryback, who was mentioned earlier. We worked on this together to figure out, what do we believe in as a company? This isn't the how we do it. This is when we look at our code bases, when we build things together. How do we all understand what our expectations are for each other? The key is that we invested in this. We invested in the training. We invested in writing things down. We didn't just do each project, just forging ahead, not trying to think about how do we do this with some degree of consistency. The other thing, and these are kind of quick, just the summary slides, but the other thing we tried to document was our actual values and code standards. Things that we as a team were saying, hey, these are our standards. These are, generally speaking, non-negotiable. Sometimes the client says, nah, I don't want to do it that way. And they're the client, right? You got to do what the client says sometimes. But generally speaking, for us, we had standards that we wrote down and we made sure everyone adhered to. So when you look at a VGV code base, especially if we've had 100% control over it, it looks just the same as another VGV code base. It's our way. You might not like it. You don't have to follow our methods. It might not be best for your team, but for us it works, and we like it, and everyone's bought in. Everyone's agreed to set the same expectation. There's disagreements, there's new ideas, there's new ways. But the key is that we all agree, right? We all do things consistently. Especially as a consulting company, the absolute worst thing is if every project is a snowflake, and every project is based on the fever dream of whoever the tech lead was for that project. Because once that person leaves, what do you do, right? What do you do? By doing it consistently, it enables that junior developer to go from a real estate app to an instrument cluster in a car and be productive within minutes, because they know how the code is structured. They know what the expectation is. They know that they have to write a test. They know that they have to do certain things, and they have to do certain things a certain way. Extremely valuable. The other thing that we did is we spent a lot of time writing about it, writing code for it. We created tools. We wrote a lot of articles over the years. This stuff all takes time. We don't get it for free. People aren't just like, hey, on the weekend, I'm just gonna write a blog post about architecture. You gotta take away from billable time for clients. You gotta take away from investing in something else. You have to make an overinvestment in doing these things. But these things helped to evangelize our methods. Perhaps you've seen some of these things. It helped that when people came and joined our company, they kind of already knew what we were about. So onboarding was a little bit easier. And we also wrote a lot of code. We wrote a lot of tools, even culminating on our vgv.dev website. A lot of open source tools. Some of these are really just programmatic implementations of our culture. So our linter rules, our test coverage tools, we have a template called Very Good Start. These things are all designed to make sure that it's easier for a team to adhere to those values, beliefs, behaviors that we've established that makes it easy for our team to achieve our goals. We also tried to put it out there for you all, so I don't know if anybody's used any of these tools. Hopefully you got some value out of it. One of the reasons we want to talk about it publicly is we want to get the feedback. We want to hear from other people, we want to learn from other people, and hopefully we help other people along the way. So the key here to this catalyst is that for a company of our size, VGV is still a relatively small company. We're not that big. These investments, I think, would not have been possible if not for Flutter. In a prior company I was at, we wanted to do something similar to our Very Good Start product, a template that helps get projects started, but we're iOS and Android native. It was too much of a pain. To build a template at a small team size, to build it twice, every time it's updated, you gotta keep up. It's just the maintenance nightmare, right? So because of Flutter's technical efficiencies, it allowed us to invest in this content, in these tools, in these processes that we would not have been able to do otherwise. I don't think we are the company we are today if it weren't for that efficiency and our ability to actually make that mindful investment in that culture. And this is another key point. Flutter's productivity, we talk about buy one, get one free, right? I talk about the 2 teams and they're like, oh, who's getting fired? I don't think we should look at it as let's reduce the team. It's what do we do with our extra time? What do we do with our extra resources, right? Maybe we write tests, especially startups. They're like, we don't need those. It takes too much time. Let's build features. Well, okay. Maybe if you have this efficiency that Flutter provides you, maybe you can allocate a little time for that. Maybe as a team, you can allocate a little bit of time you would have spent duplicating a feature for the other platform to documenting your culture, to documenting your processes, your behaviors, right? To investing in a tool that helps to reinforce those. And I think this is really important. I think Flutter's productivity means that we have more time and more resources to invest in things that make the team better. Catalyst number 5, the last one. Flutter teams are supported by an amazing community, right? Yeah, there you go. So Randy Wong is a very seasoned, experienced CTO. He said that choosing a technology means buying into that technology's ecosystems, processes, procedures, and community. So within Flutter, we have our arguments, right? We have our flame wars on Twitter about state management and other processes. As I mentioned before, we don't all have to agree. I think that's fine. But I do think that this is an amazing community. You already clapped, so you don't have to do it again. But I think it's an amazing community, right? And I think that there's, these are just a few things that I find about this community that I think is really special. I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm here. There's from day one almost. The enthusiasm for Flutter has been amazing, right? Positivity. Right? I think that I don't encounter too many people, ho-hum, these are all the things wrong with it. People are positive about what the future means and what Flutter can do for them. The other thing I think is that there's a lot of supportiveness. I don't think that there's a lot of people tearing things down. I think there's a lot of people building each other up. And there's a lot of collaboration, right? There's a lot of teams working together. You go out and you walk through this, no one out there that has a Flutter banner is a competitor. They're all collaborators, right? Everyone's working together, collaborating on open source and openness. I think that's another key thing, right? Open source, open content, being transparent has all been not only from Google, right, in terms of publishing a roadmap and telling the world with these amazing events sort of like what's coming up, but also the community, I think, has embraced that. Obviously, open source is huge to our community. And there's just a lot of manifestations of this. I think we should thank Google for their support from the early days to bootstrap this community. I think the Flutter community has an amazing code of conduct that I think has really helped to guide the community. There's GDEs, there's Flutteristas, there's the members of the Flutter community group. These are all individuals that have given their time, their energy, above and beyond their work. Not getting paid for it, right? To help bootstrap this community and make it something special. There's companies that have engaged. There's meetups all over the world, events like this, tons of open source, right? Twitter and Discord, tons of content, tons of grassroots movements. So I think all of these things are just really important to the culture of this community. And this community establishes the tone for companies working with Flutter. As Randy said, when you adopt a technology, you're gonna bring in some of that, right? And if that community is toxic, if that community is competitive, if that community is stealing from each other and trying to be the best and tear each other down, a little bit of that's gonna creep in to your team and your company because you're gonna draft on that, right? You're gonna learn from that and you're gonna embody that on your own team. So I think that the Flutter community and how we've grown and the standards we've set for ourselves is very vital to establishing the cultures within the teams that we have. So, my call to you as we go forward from here and we look at the next 6+ years of Flutter is let's keep this community amazing. Let's not be toxic. I'm not saying we are. Let's not do it though. Let's avoid that as more and more coming. We got another 10 million Flutter developers coming. Eric told us, so we're gonna hold them to that, right? That's a lot more people. That's a lot more input. We all here who are here today are the protectors of this culture, of this ecosystem, of this community. So let's just stick with it. So I mentioned there were 5 catalysts. I'm just going to recap those really quickly. To wrap up, building a strong culture, I think, is the most important thing a leader can do. Showed some stats on that, a lot of quotes and anecdotes, but it's hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard to get it right. We need all the help we can get. Flutter won't do it for us, right? Flutter doesn't create culture, it's just technology. But it provides advantages. I just gave 5, right? 5 opportunities or sort of sparks that help to do it. It's not all of them. There's more. But I think it provides us advantages, and we need to seize those opportunities. So what were they, again, just to recap? Flutter creates the opportunity for cultural change. It redefines our identities as developers to better unite our teams. It improves cross-functional collaboration within our broader organization. It increases the ROI of investments in culture so that we are more likely and more incentivized to make those investments. And Flutter itself is supported by an amazing community that helps to establish the foundations for a strong culture. So I think Flutter helps transform team culture. I think that's another value we should talk about. I think we should think about it more often. When we are selling Flutter to a client, we should be mentioning this. When we're selling client to when we're selling Flutter to an executive or leadership or whoever it is, we should be mentioning this. We should be talking about this. It's the most important thing, not just savings of time and efficiency. So how then do we actually create a good culture? Ain't nothing to it. Just do it, right? It's easy. No, just kidding. There's no recipe. There's no single definition. It's up to each person, team, company to do it. That's the hard part. The culture that we've established at our company, if we went into some other company and tried to mandate, oh, you got to be this way, it's probably not going to work, not for all companies. It's unique. It's think about culture. Culture is a big melting pot of all these different backgrounds and perspectives, right? So it's not about that there is a culture. I'm not trying to say that Flutter's culture is some monotone culture that we all need to adopt. I'm saying that it gives us tools that for each of our teams, we can figure out what works best for us, and we can invest the time and the energy to make it work for us. So I think it's up to us as a community, as a group, as Flutter engineers, product engineers, multi-platform engineers, to seize this opportunity, take advantage of this, seize the opportunity that Flutter provides for us. So, thank you very much. That's all I got to say.